So how do we solve our biggest problems? Whether it's saving an entire industry, fixing a broken system, or trying to build a better future, we're constantly facing these incredibly complex challenges. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the different ways we tackle these massive issues and explore the fundamental tension at the very heart of finding a way forward. So where do we even begin?
Well, this quote right here kind of sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? We all know we live in a highly competitive world. The pressure isn't just to succeed, it's to find the right solution and to find it fast. But as we're about to see, what one person calls the right solution often depends entirely on how they see the problem in the first place.
And that brings us to the crucial question. When a crisis hits, how do we choose our path? Do we follow the cold, hard data, the plan from the top, or do we listen to the voices on the ground? Is the answer some single grand plan, or is it 1,000 tiny solutions bubbling up from the bottom? Let's explore that tension through a few real-world examples. Okay, so our first stop is Newfoundland, and a huge debate over the future of its most vital industry, the fishery. The government was privatizing a major company called Fishery Products International, or FPI, and this one decision forced a really fundamental question about what progress actually means. Now, what's so interesting here is how clearly you can see the two sides of the coin. On one hand, you have the market-driven strategy. And the logic makes sense, right? To survive in a global market, you have to be efficient, you have to be competitive, and you have to focus on the bottom line. But then, on the other hand, you have the social ramifications. Because for the people living in those coastal towns, the fishery isn't just a business. It's a way of life, it's about jobs, keeping the community together, and protecting a resource for your kids and their kids.
And this was the official line. It's a clean, logical argument. A successful private company creates jobs and wealth, and those benefits naturally take care of the social goals we all want. It's a very top-down, analytical way of looking at the problem.
But then you hear this, and it just brilliantly illustrates the other side. This was the voice of a citizen at a public forum, and she's pointing out a massive blind spot. From her perspective, the government was so focused on market efficiency that it completely missed the human part of the equation. The idea that FPI could be more than just a company, that it could be a tool for building up the whole community. You see that conflict, right? The cold economic logic versus the real human impact. It's a theme that comes up again and again. So now let's shift from an economic crisis to a deeply social one and ask, what happens when a system that's designed to protect the most vulnerable among us is pushed to its absolute breaking point? Just look at this number for a second, 600%. It's staggering. It just grabs your attention and immediately signals the massive scale of the crisis we're talking about. This isn't some gradual increase, it's an explosion. So, what does that 600% actually represent? It's a massive spike in reported child abuse cases in less than 5 years. It was a tidal wave that completely swamped the social injustice systems. Professionals were just in a constant state of reaction, barely keeping their heads above water. This wasn't just a statistic. It was a human catastrophe unfolding in real time.
And right in the middle of this crisis, a speaker at a public forum, someone who actually works with offenders, just dropped this bombshell. Think about it. It cuts right to the heart of the problem. Our main response to this crisis, sending people to prison, it wasn't solving the underlying issue. It was just punishing the symptom. And that forces us to take a huge step back. You have to ask, what are we actually trying to do here? Are we just trying to punish people after something terrible has already happened? Or is the real goal to heal families, to rehabilitate offenders, and to stop the abuse from ever happening in the first place? The system was built for one thing, but the crisis was screaming for another.
So we've seen two very different, very tough problems. Now let's look at how we go about building solutions. And we're about to see two completely different philosophies for how to create change. The first path is the big one, the large-scale, systemic solution. This approach basically believes that to solve a big problem, you need a big, comprehensive plan, a master blueprint designed by experts and implemented from the very top. It's all about restructuring the entire system. And this quote? It's the perfect example of that top-down mindset. To fix math education, you don't just tweak the curriculum. No, you have to change society's entire attitude towards teachers, towards education, towards intellectual achievement itself. It's a bold, all-encompassing vision that starts at the highest level. All right, now for the flip side. The second path is the complete opposite. It's not about some grand plan from on high. It's about individual action, local initiative, and organic growth. Change doesn't come from a blueprint. It just bubbles up from the grassroots.
And you can really feel that difference in this quote from a small business owner. The motivation here isn't about some systemic overhaul. It's deeply personal. It's that satisfaction of creating something with your own two hands, of serving your neighbors, of building something real, piece by piece. This is the kind of change that starts with one person, one idea, one little shop on the corner.
So we've seen these two competing approaches in action, right? The grand plan from the top and the organic growth from the bottom. But why do we have these different instincts? Well, let's zoom out for a second to a framework that really helps explain it all. Turns out, it comes down to two fundamentally different ways of knowing the world.
First, you have explicit knowledge. The easiest way to think about this is science. This is the world of data, of logic, of analysis. It's the kind of knowledge you can write down in a report, prove with an experiment, or build into a systematic plan. It's structured, it's testable, and it's clear.
But then there's tacit knowledge, and this is much more like an art. This is the knowledge you get from experience, from empathy, from a gut feeling. You can't always write it down or prove it with a number. It's that intuitive understanding of a situation, that unspoken sense of what a community really needs. And this slide really puts it all together. The scientific method is all about analyzing how things work. It's about taking things apart, classifying them, and logically figuring out cause and effect. The artistic method, on the other hand, tries to understand how things feel. It's all about empathy, about putting yourself in someone else's shoes to really grasp the human experience of a problem.
Okay, so for this final section, let's bring it all home. We're going to apply this framework of art and science to the challenges we've talked about and see what it tells us about finding real, lasting solutions.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We saw the economic logic clash with community life in the FBI debate. We saw the crisis in the justice system. We heard the call for a total overhaul of education. And we felt the personal drive of local entrepreneurs. And in every single case, we saw this fundamental battle between two different ways of seeing the world.
And that brings us to the final, critical question. When we face our biggest challenges, what do we need more of? Is it better data, more rigorous analysis, the science of the solution? Or is it deeper empathy, more listening, and a more intuitive grasp of the human experience, the art of the solution? Or maybe, just maybe, the real challenge is learning how to balance both.
We're going to end with this incredibly challenging statement from that forum on child abuse. It's a difficult thing to hear, for sure, but it perfectly captures the heart of this entire discussion. It suggests that maybe our most complex problems can't be solved with logic alone, that maybe the first step isn't analysis, but the difficult, profound, and absolutely necessary art of seeing the humanity in everyone involved.